Right, folks, so today's video is going to be on Mr. Blue Sky. This video will be the chords for the song, and the next video will be the solo that comes after the first chorus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the chords in the song, and then I'm going to show you how they fit together, starting with the verse, because there's a few unusual chords in this. So the main part of the song is an F bar chord, played with your first finger all the way across the first fret, second finger on the second fret of the G string, third finger on the third fret of the A string, and pinky on the third fret of the D string. So this is basically an E chord, an E open chord, which you would normally play with your first three fingers, played with your second, third, and fourth finger, slid up a fret, and then your finger goes across to act like a capo across the strings like that. Now, the way I play my bar chords is I play them using my thumb. Because as a young guitarist, I thought that looked kind of uncool when you saw people playing bar chords like that now. I think that's a fairly ridiculous thing to say, but for some reason, I had that impression as a young guitarist, and I wanted to kind of look a bit cool, except I thought it looked cooler with your thumb hooked over the top. But you can basically use your thumb to hook over and play the bottom string. So you can do your bar chords like that. Bar chords are difficult, especially if you're a beginner guitarist, and they can be quite kind of tiring if you're playing a lot of bar chords in a song. Your wrists can get quite sore and your fingers can get a bit achy. But obviously, they're very super useful because you can play any chord using a bar chord. But what I'll do is I'll put up a video of a beginner's guide to bar chords. So if you're struggling with bar chords, keep an eye out for that coming up. Okay, so anyway, that's our first chord. Then we've got some pretty standard chords. So we've got an E minor, we've got an A7, we've got a D minor, and we've got a G. And they're all standard open chords. So I'm not going to go through the fingerings, but obviously I'll put the diagrams on the screen so you can see how to play them. But I would, if I'm playing this song, I wouldn't use the usual fingers I would use for some of the chords. So for instance, for E minor, if you're playing an F like this, I think it's easier to use your middle two fingers for your E minor rather than your first two fingers like that. So I would use my second and my third finger for the E minor. And because I've used those two fingers for the E minor, I would use them for the A7 as well. Now an A7 is an A chord with the middle string open to make it a G, to make it a 7. So I would use my second and third fingers to hold down the frets on that one. Then we've got a B bar chord. Now B flat bar chord is based on an A. So there's an A chord. If you take that shape and move it up to the third fret and put your finger across, that's a bar chord there. But I don't tend to play my A-shaped bar chords like that. I tend to use one finger across three frets like this. And my preferred finger is my pinky. So I use my first finger and my pinky to play these bar chords. So my pinky's on the first fret. Sorry, my first finger's on the first fret of the A string. I don't play the bottom string, the E string. Then my pinky's on the third fret of the D, the G, and the B. And this string is being kind of killed because my fingers kind of flattened out like that. So your finger's curving back up, and at that point, you're not holding down that bottom string, so you've kind of deadened it. So you're playing a bar chord like that. But again, if you're unsure or a bit new to bar chords, I shall put up a bar chord video with some tips on how to make these things a bit easier to play. So I'm using my first finger and my pinky for that. But you can use your first finger and your third finger as well, depending on which you find easiest. Which means that you're not really barring with your first finger, you're just holding down the first fret, because this finger is holding down the other three strings, and you're also using the flat of that finger to kill the high E string. So you just really need to have this finger on this fret here, so it makes it slightly easier to play. So you'll have to maybe experiment to decide which ones you want to use for those, if you want to use your third finger and your first finger, or your pinky and your first finger. Now the next chord is a B flat chord with a C bass. So that means you're still using these three strings with your finger across there, but you're also adding the C on the third fret of the A string, and you're also now holding down this note. So you flattened this finger right out across the 4 frets, and then you can use that finger to play the bass. So I'm using my pinky for the 4 strings here on the 3rd fret, and my 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. if I was doing those kind of bar chords, because I'm using my pinky because I play my B flat bar chord with my pinky, so using my third finger for the extra note is easy to do. If you were playing your bar chord like this, I would then recommend using your second finger on the third fret of the A string. But if all that is kind of complicated, you find it difficult, you can also just use one finger and hold down all 5 strings with that one finger. It sounds exactly the same, but it might be a little bit hard to change to, because after you've done that chord, the next chord is an F chord, like that. Now when I'm playing my B flat with a C bass like this, it's easy to change because your finger's already on the right place for the F chord. You just have to lift up your pinky off the strings, put in your other fingers, and you're back there, because your pinky's on the 3rd fret of the D string and your third finger is on the 3rd fret of the A string, and that's what they are for the F chord. So that's all the chords you'll need for the verse, and this is how they go together. So we've got to the bit where you start the singing. Now also to say, when you're playing the chords, they're not ringing out. You need to basically cut them off, which you can do with a combination of releasing the pressure with your left hand, and or using the flat of your right hand just to kill the strings in between each time you play the chord. So it's a quick movement of your hand to play all the strings on the chord, and then just rest your right hand across the strings. Now you'll need to use that technique for your open chords, because obviously when you're playing the open chords, you don't have your left hand covering all the strings to dampen them. So that's all right hand for me, that dampening. So play and then just rest. So F, we're going to play F 12 times. Well, actually, when the song starts off, the introduction, you play the F 32 times. 16 times just with the piano, and then 16 times with the drums coming in. So there's a drum roll at the end of the 4th bar, and then there's another 4 bars with the F still playing, and because there's 4 hits per bar, that makes 16. So 32 in total, you play F 32 times. But I mean, you can just basically keep playing F till the singing starts. Now when the singing starts, you're going to play it again 12 times. Then you're going to play 2 E minors, for which I'm using my 2nd and 3rd finger. And then A7, 2 A7s, again I'm using my 2nd and 3rd finger. 4 D minors, 4 Gs, 4 E minors, 4 A7s, 4 B flats, 4 B flat with a C bass, 4 Fs, and then 4 B flats with C bass to finish. So it's walking down the avenue, see how the sun shines brightly on the city, the streets where once was pity, Mr. Blue Sky's living here today. And that's the verse. That's the whole verse. Then we're going to go into the chorus. Now the chorus is going to be a combination of chords that aren't F and chords that are F, but are different versions of F, if that makes sense. So to explain that, what you have in the chorus, you have a bass line that plays a D once, 2 Cs, B flat once, 2 As, G once, 2 Fs, and then... Now, every second chord with the 2 hits is an F chord on the guitar, but it's an F chord with a different bass note. So we're going to start off with a standard D minor, hit it once, and then stop it with your right hand. Then play an F, but this time play an F without the bottom string. So the bottom note of the F is the C, that's the 3rd fret of the A string. So you're just playing a standard F chord, but not with the bottom note. Twice, along with the bass. So that's your C bass note. Then you're going to play a B flat bar chord once. Then you're going to play an F chord with just 4 fingers, and you're going to leave the A string open, because A is part of an F chord and the bass is playing the A, so you're going to play that A bass note. So to play that chord, you're just using your 1st finger on the first fret of the high E and B string, second finger on the second fret of the G string, third finger on the third fret of the D string, and the A string open. And you hit that twice. Now, as I say, A is a note in the F chord, so it's an F chord, but it's an F chord with an A bass. Then you're going to play a G minor chord as a bar chord. So F is played as a bar chord with an E major shape. If you take an E minor shape, so an E minor bass that you're taking, you're playing the G note rather than the G sharp. So you're playing just the two strings. Slide that up to the 5th fret of the A and the D string. Put your first finger all the way across the 3rd fret. That's a G minor bar chord. Now, I think minor bar chords are slightly easier to play than major bar chords because you've got fewer fingers on and you're still using your thumb to squeeze that finger across. You don't have to get that first finger in. So that's a G minor bar chord on the 3rd fret. You hit that once, and then finally you do 2 hits as an F bar chord with all 6 strings. So that includes the bottom F note, which is the bass note that the bass is playing on that chord. And then to finish the first sequence of the chorus, so D minor, F with a C bass. Oh, sorry, what am I playing? D minor, F with a C bass, B flat bar chord, F with an A bass, G minor, F with an F bass. You're going to come up to the 6th fret and you're going to play the same shape as you're playing on the 1st fret for the B flat, but up here on the 6th fret make it an E flat chord, and you let that chord ring out and you play it twice. It kind of goes ba ba ba, so you're going to go ba, so you play that twice, and then you play the E shaped bar chord on the same 6th fret. So you're going from that with your finger across the 3 strings here to your E shape with your 3 fingers and your finger all the way across the 6th fret. So it kind of goes ba, 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 and you let that ring out. So that's an E flat to a B flat, but this B flat's played on the 6th fret rather than the B flat played down here on the 1st fret with that bar chord shape. Then you play the whole chorus sequence again. Do this ba ba ba, hit that again, and then do this B flat with a C bass note 8 times. Again, they're damped, so they're separate chords, using your right hand to kill the strings in between. Again, I would probably play at this point like that. You can use one finger, or you can do it with those 2 fingers too. So I suppose what I'm tending to do is I'm using different fingers for the chords at different times depending on what I'm changing from and what I'm changing to. And I suppose that's just something that comes with kind of experience because, well, you can spend many years learning to play the guitar, so you can end up being a lazier guitarist. So in the section at the end of the chorus where we're playing this E flat chord on the 6th fret, you know, an A-shaped bar chord, down to an E-shaped bar chord on the 6th fret, which is a B flat chord. The guitar doesn't actually appear to play the full chord. You can hear the guitar in the background picking the chord. So it's a partial part of the chord, so it's not the whole of the chord. So it's starting with your, well actually for this I would use my 3rd finger across the 8th fret. So with the E flat chord, using the 3 strings, the D string, the G string and the B string, you're holding them down with your 3rd finger, you would pick D, G, B, G, or 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, 3rd string, with that shape, and then take part of the B flat chord on the 6th fret, which would be these 3 notes, so that's the 8th fret of the G string, 7th fret of the G string, 6th fret of the B string, same picking pattern, 4, 3, 2, 3, or D string, G string, B string, G string, so that would go 8th fret, before you go into the, or back into the chorus if it's the first time through, because remember you play the chorus through twice. So that's pretty much the whole song. The only two variations, at the end of the last verse before you go into the final chorus, this bit where you're going to go, so you go from the E minor, the A A7, E4 and E minors, 4 A7s, B flat with a C bass, 4 times, then a bar chord on the 4th fret, the A-shaped bar chord used for B flat on the 1st fret on the 4th fret, and then slide that up another 2 frets to the 6th fret, so that's a D flat chord there on the 4th fret, and it's an E flat chord here on the 6th fret, 4 times, so it goes, what is it? Mr. You did it right, but here comes Mr. Knight, creeping over with his hand upon your shoulder. We'll remember you this, we'll remember you this, and then back into the chorus again. And the chorus is exactly the same, again, apart from right at the end. So the last time when you do the, you kind of slow down the very last time. So you're going to go your E flat chord, 6th fret, 6th fret, B flat chord, and then you finish on an F chord on the 8th fret, which is an F chord done with an A-shaped bar chord. And you hit that once at the end. So it's that bit where you're kind of going. And it finishes off like that. Now there is that last bit, that really cool last bit at the end, but I'm not going to include that because that's complicated. So those are the chords for Mr. Blue Sky, and the next video will show you the little guitar solo after the first chorus.